Some other news, proceedings are off to a slow start this morning on the closing day of the EFF's National People's Assembly. While the event was expected to commence at 8 a.m. this morning, a few delegates had arrived at that time. Well, the NPA is expected to announce the final resolutions on various policies as the constitutional amendments that have been adopted by the conference. SABC News reporter Natasha Phiri joins us now live. She's been giving us live updates from Nasrec. A very good morning to you once again. Of course, earlier on you speaking to Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi with regards to some of the resolutions and amendments that they will be making in the Constitution come this morning. What else are we expecting on the last day of the People's Address?
Well, thank you, Shante. What we can expect right now, we've just, looking at the small monitor, EFF delegates are slowly trickling in to the main hall. Of course, they're just patiently awaiting the adoption of those commissions like your organizational redesign, your land agrarian reform, and other issues, of course. But Shante, after that adoption of commission, EFF delegates will then vote on it, and of course there will be a declaration there by the EFF president Julius Malema, and shortly after that he will be giving his closing address, and of course there will be a media briefing. When speaking to Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, he had said that they expect all proceedings to be done by 2 o'clock this afternoon. But actually I'm joined by Dr. Levi Ndo, I beg your pardon, Mr. Levi Ndo, who's a political analyst. Thank you so much for joining us on the SABC once again. I mean, yesterday was quite an interesting day. We saw the EFF amended its constitution from increasing the number of Central Command team members from 35 to about 40 members. When engaging Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi on this, he had said that this was the reason solely behind this was actually to increase the capacity of the EFF.
Indeed, yesterday was quite busy. Looking at the fact that they had to look at constitutional amendments, and all other commissions has to meet, and that's why they must do a report back now. But look at the growth of the EFF in the past 5 years. It means that the numbers have increased, and also need sufficient capacity within the top leadership. And what is more interesting is that this is the view that actually came from the delegates themselves, who said, we think 35 is a bit smaller number, and we actually need a much bigger number. But of quite interest and quite impressive is the fact that the EFF has also made it a point that they make sure that there is sufficient women representation. Even though they spoke of 50-50, but the number of women is actually more than the number of males within the EFF. It is also confirmed by the delegates that there are more women delegates here as compared to male delegates. I think that should have been one of the issues that influenced this decision. And
you're right, 22 out of these 40 CCT members are actually women. Does this then mean that finally the EFF will then be able to establish their women's command?
One of the issues that they were emphasizing, and it was there in the political report of the CIC, is that even though they're not that much impressive with the student command, they feel that it's important that they must actually come with the women's wing. And it's also informed by the realities that we face in society. We just coming out of the 16 days of violence against women and children, and there are a lot of challenges, reported issues that affected women. A lot of them have been killed, abused. And I think based on the articulation by the CIC, it will then be very, very important to have the women's wing actually to mainly focus on the issues affecting women. And that's what also most organizations do have as well. And I think the EFF is also on the right path.
Let's talk about the slates. One would say it's somewhat clear that Julius Malema's slate of Matorokisi actually won, as opposed to the slate of Dalimpofu, the Kokota Piano. Now you have a situation where, in terms of the Central Command team, the likes of Dalimpofu, the former chairperson, and Leanne, the former Treasurer General, were not even nominated. The likes of Naledi Chiro as well, who's labelled as a young female firebrand leader, was not even nominated. You had Godrich Gadi, the former Secretary General, who was nominated but declined. Other people see it as if Julius Malema had actually dealt with his opponents.
There is a story that appeared 2 weeks ago, and in this story on the Sunday World, it was actually talking about the slate in the EFF, and the headline said Dalimpofu is dropped from the slate, and when there was a build-up towards the conference, and the indications that he might come back, he might not come back, it created some sense of interest to say, let's see what exactly is actually going to happen. But now if there is a Matorokisi group and a piano group, it then comes that indeed the Matorokisi group has actually made it. But of more interest to me is the situation of the Secretary General, the former Secretary General. For me, there are two issues. When we talk about the growth of the EFF and the good performance of the EFF, you cannot divorce that growth from the SG, because it's the one who runs the organization on a regular basis. And I felt that if he is then nominated to serve only in the Central Command, he might have felt that I must also be credited for the growth of the EFF, and I cannot just be I cannot just be reduced only to become an ordinary member of the CIC. The other reason might be that he might be having other responsibilities that he feels he can pursue outside the leadership of the EFF. He might remain a loyal member of the EFF, but not in any position of the EFF. But another factor will be that as well, that he's saying, you removed me from being the SG, I've got nothing to do with the party. So we're still going to get the reality as time goes on.
Okay, let's talk about, I think also people would be wondering what happens to the likes of Leanne, Dalimpofu, Godrich Gadi now. Where is their place? Where do they find their place within the party?
It's important for people to understand that in politics you get elected. And if you are not re-elected, you're out. And that is why most people would use all different means to stay or to keep their positions in political parties. What then would happen is that if they are card-carrying members of the EFF, they will just continue as members of the EFF, not occupying any position in the EFF. So if they want to continue and renew their membership, they will do so. If they don't want to continue renewing their membership, they'll also do so. But the fact of the matter is that they are not in the leadership positions of the EFF. The EFF might decide to say, based on the expertise, based on the fact that these people have been in the leadership positions, maybe we might also rope them in order for them to provide guidance within the structures of the EFF. That solemnly lie in the hands of the leadership that has just been elected.
And maybe for those who don't know, for those who are seeking clarity at home, just quickly take us through the process. So, Dalimpofu is also a member of parliament, Naledi Chiro is also a member of parliament, but they aren't in the Central Command team. Of course, they will be carrying out their duties as MPs until the 5-year tenure actually expires.
Yes, indeed. What we need to consider very importantly is that the EFF had the NPA now this. The EFF has already submitted or has members in parliament. Yes. Now these are two separate processes. Within the EFF, these members no longer occupy positions or any position because they've not been re-elected. As it stands now, they remain members of parliament. What might happen, which lies within the hands of the EFF, is to decide whether they actually continue as members of parliament or they actually remove them and replace them with other people to go and to parliament. So the ball here lies with the leadership of the EFF.
Now let's talk about the growth of the party, something that you touched on not so long ago. You had also mentioned that the Secretary General's position should be a full-time position. Remember, the Secretary General's position, the Secretary General, I beg your pardon, plays a very integral role within a party. That is basically the engine of the organization. Now you have a man like Marshall Dlamini, who played a very crucial role in KZN. The membership grew from 70,000 to about 300,000 of the EFF in that province. How then do you see his position in this party? Will the party have a trajectory where they actually go up and actually grow as the EFF?
That is one big challenge that the current Secretary General face. All of us agree that there has been sufficient growth within the EFF, and it's confirmed by the election results. They moved from 6% to 9%. That is tremendous growth. But there are different responsibilities that one would excel in. One can be a very good person to recruit members to the organization, and that would not translate that person to become the best Secretary General. And you can still have a very good person to run the organization, but who cannot easily go and mobilize people on the ground. But I hope the members of the EFF might have seen something much better than what Gadi have in determining whether to put Dlamini in to this position. But another aspect that we need to look at, which is what most people are actually saying now, is that this is the team that the CIC wanted to have. And it will then mean that maybe these are the right people who fit well into the vision of the EFF. And he might have seen a lot from these people, and maybe they're actually going to move the organization from where it is now to much greater heights.
Talking about the team that the CIC, this being the current leadership being the team that the CIC wanted to have, why did you not have the same leaders 5 years ago?
Well, remember, this is a very, very young party, and there are other areas that are very important that we need to look at as well, which for me is going to be a challenge to the current leadership. When the EFF was formed, and having the current leadership up until today, the understanding at the time is totally different to what is happening now. These are the people who sat down and say, we need to develop a project, and this project is economic freedom fighters. And they dropped a lot of things in order to build the party. And now what you have is that you have got people that have been recruited along the way to come in, and some are now in the leadership in the second conference of the EFF. What will then mean is that these people must actually work much harder than those who came into the party. And that's why I'm saying, for me it was going to be more important to have these people who served in the leadership of the EFF when it started, so that they're able to take the others who have just come in through in order to build or consolidate the strength of the party.
Okay, well, let's just quickly cross live to those proceedings. It seems as if they've already started plenary